Okay, thank you. Thank you. You ready, brother? Stan? All right, I appreciate you, brothers. I appreciate having this opportunity to get to say a few words with you, brothers and sisters here in the Good Life. How are you, Brother Brian? It is always great to be or have opportunity. Things are really on the move at an escalated rate. And I only wish there were more of me to fulfill the obligations or the demands that our people are developing as the hour gets late in terms of the stability and the capability of the race. And pretty soon we're going to make a public offering to the community at large to allow 3 people, whomever or whatever they assume about themselves, would stand up for 3 positions that are going to be offered from me to 3 of any of you who will choose to work with me, and we're putting a package together to make it so that we could do for you what you deserve for what you will be asked to do. And I am humbled by having the opportunity. It appears as if the demand is solid enough to sustain a wider crew on the boat, and it is very possible that we could be on the verge of a major transition. Word, I don't know how, I don't know in what form or who's doing it, but word is passing and solidifying at an escalating rate, and other types of people are now sitting away and listening to this type of information like that we've done here now. And in these particular cases, these are conscious of our people who, for whatever the reason in life, have acquired another level of financial stability without in any way having compromised their integrity. And these people are starting to come out to say, look, what can we do to advance what we believe is a moment that must be supported? And it's a humbling perception of a possible transition where the operation could step up and in fact begin to toe the line, initially being able to take 3, shortly thereafter, in consideration of the potential of the formula, quickly go to 12, and that these 12 would meet up with 12s coming from other directions. And at some point soon, maybe by 90 days, they could collectively come to some harmonious relationship that might result in only a nationwide opportunity to produce a response team to actually fill the gaps that we perceived in our dialogues together about what is not there. Others have now decided that they would like to foster the unfolding of a network that made itself responsible. Now, responsibility is a vague term, but opportunity defines what we're going to be responsible for. So you never know what you may have to do. All you know is you carry many tools and a multiple layered network of people with a certain, shall we say, ever-present capability that regardless of the situation, that they could produce a consequence on behalf of the people that would be good. And the only problem is that I also see myself having to go through a transition. I am going to have a less opportunity to speak and have to take more responsibility to administrate and congeal the things that are sitting now at the end of a relationship that have relationships that have developed in pots in all these different circles. It's about time to do the weaving. And I'm a far better negotiator and nuts and bolts behind the scenes, agitator and formulator and initiator, then an organizer than I am a speaker. And the speaking actually was the last thing to develop. It was the thing that was missing, was an overt way of dialoguing with people about skills that I had to practice and utilize long before I got to this spot. And last night we had a program with the black firemen, and it was very important. You know, we're here to talk about FEMA, and we're going to get to do some of that. And the point of that program was to get into the people who potentially could be called upon by the people who would not want or do not have our best interests at heart. And there was great reluctancy on a part of these brothers as to whether they wanted to come out to a room where somebody was going to talk about something that some of them have already been made familiar with as a part of their job, and sometimes could perceive a dialogue with me as jeopardizing their job because it could contradict what they're being told they have to do with what we're being saying we might do, and that they deserve to hear both scenarios so that they can make a good decision. See, we don't want them, because they've only heard their side, make a bad decision thinking they can always pull it off. They might not be able to, so they've got to be given another opportunity, a way to hedge their bet. Sometimes the greater return is on the higher odds horse. Yes, the 2-to-1 may win, but the 10-to-1 pay better. Right? Now you got to make a decision about how you want to play it. So we had this opportunity, and even there, I have worked in the government. I have worked with firemen. And as I talk with them about what I knew, about what they suffer from, when they out with the hoses with the holes in it, because when the new hoses came, they went to the white boy neighborhoods, to the white firehouses. And when the new trucks came, they went to the white firehouses, and the old trucks got shifted into the black neighborhood. They know when they go to that house, the white captains say, now tear that black house down, so that when that fire is over, even if it was a marginal fire, they supposed to plug enough holes in that wall to make that house unlivable. They know they are agents of regentrification if utilized. We saw it in Chicago, 263 unanswered fires by the fire department to assure that the University of Chicago could get a specific neighborhood of ours that then became Woodline, which is now what we call the high parketization of Woodline. And now they're into South Shore. You hear Clinton talking about something going on in Chicago with this bank. Well, he and the CIA and a CIA Foundation-controlled bank through South Shore Bank in Chicago hooked then into Woodline, and now they got University of Chicago going from the 5000 block now into the 7000 block. They've expanded far beyond the university, taking this land. So we talked to them about, but these are things that I did long before I got to this spot. And as I talked about them, about how we had to respond, and even in the murder of Harold Washington, how important the fire department was in getting the appropriate injections into his arm, removing him in a medical evacuation way, that he was suffering at every moment he was at their control before they then turned him over to somebody else who, regardless of how capable they were, would be incapable of recovering from the other two people who touched him prior to. So we talked, and there was reluctancy, but as you know, by the time we finished, they got up with each other and said, damn. And they need to know that something is going on to defend the race, and they need to make it some sort of decision, but they also need to have an opportunity to know that we are thinking about some critical things. I told them, imagine sitting in a room like this, who knows when from now, and y'all sitting up arguing about who's going to be chief. Right? Because that's what happens when you win. You get to be the chief. You get to, and then they start thinking, I said, now y'all have the right to plan. How we going to fight the fire? They got to do that now. Because we still need firemen. If it's our shit, we still need firemen. People do make mistakes. So they've got to develop some sort of fire system right now for us under our new situation. And they got to stand ready and say, project is complete. This is how we divide the cities. This is how we can replace the bad equipment. This is how we can come up with zones. And they've got to think like that. And that'll even help them be better decisive decision makers in their daily activities, because they've taken more of a supervisory responsibility for what they see going on around them. I always try to be relative with the people that I'm talking about, because everybody perceives that somehow what they do is unimportant in the transition period. Everything is necessary. And the opportunity is that we have a better way of doing everything. And that's an awesome opportunity. And we could fuck up. Oh, we could mess up. Yes, I effed up. Right. We could mess up. I'm getting good. I got to go to the Shrine of Black Madonna in Houston. They already said no cussing, so I better get it, use this good life for training so I can get it together. Right? Okay. So these things are going on, and I see that my responsibilities are in transition. I see in various parts of the country people developing that do things similar to the things that I'm doing, so that a way or the translators are unfolding, because people may not have had confidence in holding some junk up before another set of people, but after somebody did it a while, it became a little easier for somebody else to do it. I saw Dick Gregory do this type of thing. I saw other people do it that made me figure out I could do something with it, and others have now. So then we fill in a gap, then we have to move on and assume other responsibilities. So I perceive some sort of transition going on. These things have no opening and no closing, but they unfold. And I believe in the law, and I see the law unfolding, and I am becoming more aware of what I am forced to do now as my role is changing. And I honestly say that the information sources that we have around the country are second to none. I don't know what anybody else is doing or what they're trying to do with the information that they're knowing. But somehow we done set up and activated a catalytic little squad out here that doesn't all know who they are, but they some of the sharpest analysts and inferers of information, and will never probably under this regime ever get the respect they're due. If they were white, they'd be in the State Department, and they'd be in the Defense Department. They'd be in places where they were doing top level, because there's 28 and 26 and 25-year-old white boys in them spots right now. 33-year-old white boy managing 60,000 people, sitting up in a spot so that by the time he's 40, he done touched all of the throttles, so they're going to let him drive a truck. And I'm saying that within our race are these same people. They just have to pull off and now start to work in a way that they will get the reward they deserve, but it will never be from him. I made a point about identifying open positions. You see, I say, well, okay, we ain't got no expert on the World Bank. Somebody need to go away and begin the process of trying to make themselves that type of person. Now, after going all of these places and knowing we need this information, now, okay, so something don't arise, so we say, okay, we got a position open for someone to be an expert on the World Bank. And you apply for that position, be whatever you want to be. You don't have to know it all, but you got to have a formula for study that will assure that you can translate the information in a way that you can digest it and relay it. And that's what you have. It ain't going to be because you say you went to such and such school and got who's what degree, and some white then honored you in some sort of way. Under this formula, that is unimpressive. Check. So I just want to throw that out as we move on, to say that it appears as if we will be able to widen our responsibilities. The transition looks like it will happen without much difficulty whatsoever, in terms of that it will take major shifts. I think that we can even better sophisticate the passing of the information. I'm real excited about being able to put certain things down on paper and relay them almost instantaneously to different communities that I've been to where we know the information people are. There has to be almost in every city 70 or 80 people that are well tuned right on the thing, right? Now, all you got to do is plug them. Just plug them and feed them. Every day, what I'm talking about this week, something else will replace it next week. Which means that the cycle is so fast now. The people's ability to throw everything in there and for it to be decisive and important and be flushed out comes so quick that we have to set up a relay system so that we don't have to keep repeating things we already said, and we can just keep pushing them. And in time, everybody be able to collect all of the pieces and be able to then get the focus that we're trying to relay as we arm our people with critical information. And I just know even those amongst you who capabilities have increased, as I have seen over the time that I have been here, I'm pleased to be in your association. Brother brought up an article, I mentioned it the other night, from the Rolling Stone. Little rock music. Now these two white boys, them two stupid white boys. I don't know what the white boys is doing out there, but if that's hot, then they got it going on, cuz. But this is the story. The story is the origin of AIDS. And this is a very important article. In fact, I should show it together because on the side it says the origin of AIDS. You turn to the other side and you see the little black baby's mouth open. Now that's very suggestive. And the perception is that there's a relationship between the origin of AIDS and that black baby having its mouth open before that instrument that somehow was making some sort of penetration into its body. And for whatever the reason, they have chosen to relay this information. There are some Jewish doctors who are being asked about their role in much of this, and much of their answer and dialogue is, I refuse to talk. And it always made me feel funny about how jumpy they were when the AIDS and Jewish doctors thing developed, because they seemed to be covering something greater than we perceived. And they overreacted so strongly as if they were trying to beat off this dialogue that we got suspicious that it may be more to it than we even thought. And I think now that as time has passed, this appears to be absolutely true. Thank you. Also, again, I don't know what's going to happen. I've heard about a poster that's hanging up at that at the white radio station, KPF. What's the name of that station? KPFK. What's the name of that station, bro? KPFK. KPFK. I hear they got a big sign hanging on the door when you walk in. Say your 3 signs. You better not talk about the Jewish people while you're on the air, else we'll kick your ass off. Well, don't say ass. Let me strike. Boy, I ain't gonna make it to the shrine now, my sister. I ain't gonna make it. Don't look like Brother Steve gonna make it to the shrine. Well, I'm gonna lose that money. Okay, so the point of it is that there's a memo on the bulletin board. As a brother has now reported, there are 3 signs there gagging them from being able to speak about Jewish people because of an allegation filed against them. And I extremely never want to emphasize what it means that these are merely allegations and that they're actually suffering the penalty of the allegation without ever having been proved guilty. And it's a dangerous precedent. And I say, I'm a little different than everybody. If you can't do it the way you're supposed to do it, then let them do it. Because we don't want to give the perception that it's okay, because just our presence means it's okay, because we believe in each other. I believe in you, so if you're there, it must be okay. I don't believe in a suppressed you. I won't accept from you less than all of you. Therefore, any relationship that makes you less than what you ought to be with us is no relationship worth keeping. Check. Somewhere we got to draw the line. So this is KPFK on trial. And that those people who serve KPFK, who have served it well by trying to give information that is positive, and it comes from various angles. I've heard black people on there from different angles. Some of them angles I didn't even like, but I ain't going to be against their right to be on there. And if they in the black community and they got a viewpoint, then good, let that viewpoint be on there. If somebody else got a more black view, then fine, that should be on there too. I'm not going to be against which flavor should be in the pot. But I do say that no dialogue is worth the knees bending, but I make the suggestion to Los Angeles that you signal in the highest way the need for something that's responsible for the bottom line, because the shit is coming from all angles. It's just out of hand. I have to tell you, I hate to break this to you, but this thing is out of control. The whites are too arrogant here. That's right. They are. They're just too arrogant, and this is because they're not meeting any resistance. I mean, just no resistance. When we were with the firemen last night, there was one black fireman who, when Rodney King got beat up, while he was off duty, he spoke into a TV camera about how terrible this was. The white fire people came and put the word out they was going to call him in and take his job. So the head of the black thing called the blacks in and said, we should talk with this guy and sent him on down there to the meeting. And the brother said, no, well, that's not what we should do. If they're going to call him in, we going down there with him. Because we want to defend his right to speak when he's off duty about something that he don't like, and they shouldn't have beat him. You see, it ain't even that he's wrong. It's that he spoke. And the white man is telling him, nigga, you don't speak like that when you work for me. And the other brothers are willing to let him go and be sacrificed. Not knowing that if it's him today, they'll get them for half that tomorrow, right? So I'm glad that the brothers who produced the program that we were at yesterday got the other brothers together and told the white boy we all coming. So the white boy said, well, then none of y'all come. So the brother even was in the room last night, or when we spoke, and he appreciated not only us speaking about it, but the other firemen especially who stood with him so that he didn't get in trouble for telling the truth. But that only alludes to a climate, you know. Shit, when Irv Rubin got out of jail, you would have swore that Irv Rubin was going to be locking people up. Talking to all into, I'm going to get y'all. Last thing I do I'm going to get y'all for what y'all took me to jail for. Da-da-da-da-da. I mean, Mexico, he get out in 2 weeks, say his wife injured. His wife dead yet? No. She going to outlive all of y'all, right? He ain't never going back. But it don't take much. There ain't nobody counting. So anyway, y'all, we need to think about that in some form or fashion. And again, Now and Tell Pro is about the numbing of the skulls so that the people are not decisive about what they should be. We were here the other day, and we just need to do this for this particular tape for the record about the LAPD enlist civilians for stakeout video duty. You all see that? Y'all saw that? This is Saturday's newspaper, Saturday's LA Times. You see that, sister? You saw that story? You heard about it, didn't you? You saw it. Isn't that terrible? Would you volunteer for that? I mean, neither. But we need to be finding out who did, right? They could call this criminal activity. They could be sitting in the Good Life parking lot with a camera talking about, I'm doing this to help the police. And, well, yeah, RICO, brother, but we ain't there yet. Now, that's another whole nother group of stuff. Right. And I think we need to use RICO. All the things that the whites did are a criminal monetary conspiracy. We lump them together and we lay claim to it and we auction the shit off. That's why I said go look at them houses. We're going to have some auctions because we're going to lay claim to some of this stuff. And we see the next phase has been that we are now trying to establish what we will lay claim to, what it is worth, and how long it would actually take them if systematically they had to be physically moved from one spot to another. Oh, yeah, got to have a plan. You got to show them you're thinking about it that seriously. Because every night they go to bed, they say, I wonder when. And they need that type of pressure into the system that will produce the appropriate cancers that will have them all fall weak before we even go to get them. Check, right? Everybody's good with the conclusions. Show you right. 1 year after the videotaped beating of motorist Rodney King, embarrassed Los Angeles Police Department is enlisting San Fernando residents to help conduct stakeouts by videotaping suspected criminal activity. The video volunteers, who will be unarmed, will be in radio contact with officers who will sit in unmarked patrol cars in buildings and on rooftops, watching with the binoculars and video cameras in high crime areas. Now, you know what's a high crime area? Anywhere where who live? The highest people, that's what I mean. Wherever the highest people live, that's where they're going. It says in the purest form of, it's the purest form of community policing. It's called the Community Surveillance Program, and about 50 volunteers are being trained to conduct police stakeouts. It says initially the volunteers will be used mainly to watch areas plagued by graffiti, vandalism, and burglary. But as they gain experience, police will use them in criminal stakeouts and to watch areas known for high-volume drug sales, Proctor said. And I think this is a quasi way of beginning to find friends. You know what I mean? I mean, this is more than just what they're trying. They're going to get people who will volunteer for other types of things. And now they also say that they have to sign away their liability. Brother Marcus, could you purchase for me some sort of grape juice or something? Thank you, brother. Volunteers will receive training in police surveillance techniques, radio procedures, and how to testify in court. And that these people will actually begin to be a process, because you'll have to create a file on each person. Now, you'll have to know enough about this person so that you will never suspect that they will portray your interests. You're going to have to do a security check on the person, because who's to say Joe Blow Mafia, that ain't the one being a volunteer, so he can find out where the stakeout's at. In fact, check. Okay, right. Okay. If offered, serve. Check. We can meet even in the washroom back there. Not that because it's high crime, we will even qualify. But we don't want it to slip over into crime becoming political diversity. That's our moment. I ain't for someone stopping what they allege to be crime if they straight up about trying to catch the wrong. But I know that ain't about crime, that's about control. So we don't want it to slip over, and we don't want overzealous citizens acquire authority without training. We're suffering from people who were trained being and doing ungodly things, let alone the 2-3 day trained people now coming out gaining authority over other people, some who may sick them on their friends or ones they don't like. I know a lot of people don't like me. So if they don't like me, they'll sick them on me. Well, I know where we go. Let's go over here. And then they start claiming or hiding behind someone else's authority under the guise of, I followed you all over L.A. because I was doing it under the volunteer surveillance program. And then we have to come to some decision about what happens when we run into the crossroad with this type. It's going to happen. Because they're going to slip up and we're going to catch somebody doing something, because that's all they ever done. So I ain't going to say, boy, I wonder if they're going to do it. I'm saying, ooh, I wonder when we're going to catch them. Okay. Check. So be on the alert that proactively we have to be up for this, and be up and listen carefully for any opportunity. If they call a meeting, go down there. Now, they say, the LA Times says that we agreed not to reveal who these people were while they were there. Now, the LA Times is the mafia. So you now telling the wolf who going to be watching one of the wolf's operations that they can't report on, right? Because, in fact, there was an article in yesterday's LA Times about how now advertisers, due to the restricted amount of advertising money, are gaining more authority over controlling adverse news about themselves, and magazines and television reporters are now pulling off of advertisers a draining pool of financial support. To protect it, they're selling them no adverse news. And that's what they have to sell them now. And we say that someone reduced or constricted this thing so that situations like that would be possible. Check. Because we just don't say, well, hey, isn't it something that this happened? Well, it is that it was done by somebody to force something to happen. Brother just faxed me this today from Ohio. This is the March 12th Cincinnati Enquirer, where former CIA Director William Colby was speaking. You see, it ought to be 2-3 articles in every city. It ought to be faxed to somebody in another spot. And if 10-12 cities sent the 3 most important things they saw that day to the central source, and that source then faxed everybody back the package, shit, we got it going on. And then someplace, some spot, on every Friday or every Wednesday or whatever that town's day is, they go to that spot and hear the report that will receive so that they can spread the word that this is our full court or our emergency management system got them well engaged. And when people do this, they will get confidence in themselves. We need things to show our people that they do know what they need to know. They need to have confidence in what they know and know the power of what they know. So we have those type of what the whites call confidence-building activities. This ex-CIA boss warns of terrorism social ills. Social ills become synonymous with terrorism. Now, this is Vaseline. This is Vaseline on the people to equate social suffering with terrorism. This is very important now because no longer is communism synopsis with terrorism, right? So now it's social ills. Now that means that to stop terrorism, you got to watch who's ever suffering. And I suggest to you that there are various experiments being transacted now that are giving them some sort of perception as to what would happen if the people were all cut off instantly. One of the things, of course, was in Michigan. You all know about what happened in Michigan, right?
No.
Y'all don't know about what happened in Michigan?
I don't.
You don't, brother? Any rest of y'all know about what happened in Michigan? Yeah, what happened with the welfare?
Got 83,000 people.
You've been listening to them tapes, Ed.
I got that one, Brother Steve.
All right, brother, I appreciate you.
I was hip to that.
And so what happened up there? What happened? They did what? They say it again, Ed.
They cut about 83,000 people from welfare. And what I saw on Nightline, they had 2 senators from Michigan. And they were saying, we're not going to worry about all of them. Some of them will catch on through like the mental health services. And they were saying their rationale for doing it was that, well, they'll catch on through one of the other programs, which of course didn't happen.
Okay, and what has happened to the 83,000? What are they doing now?
Living, it's out on the streets.
Anybody heard about them?
Yeah.
What happened to them?
Well, my sister said a lot of people living on the street, they have to stay in warm-up houses during the day, and even the children are on the street.
Right. Over 5,000 people were evicted within 10 days of that ruling. Now, what happens, what does FEMA do in situations like that where there are mass population migrations? You all leaving your house 5,000 at a time. That's how many had to move. That's not how many people were living in the 5,000 places. That 5,000 people got evicted immediately. And what happened to them? That's population migration. That's FEMA's responsibility. They are migrating. They're coming up out of their houses and they're going into the streets. Where FEMA, remember, is responsible for the homeless. Check. Got to see a connection here. Now, what happens when the people then start to disrupt things up there? It happened here. Who shows up? Jesse Jackson. Maybe the same thing. I don't know. Check. Who showed up when the Gates thing broke? And who else? I was Sharpton showed up too, right? Okay. Okay. Now, there may be a formula to this thing. When they had the riots in Washington, who showed up? Same set, right? New York, same sets. It seems as though that FEMA got a fire patrol. Hey, now you got all of these people who are in a place, 83,000 black people being moved or being subjugated to reduced finances, right? And it didn't take them no time to whip this out and whip it down. Now, this was an experiment because the next thing that happened was that the state of Maryland came out and started to offer the fact that they would not give welfare unless 3 things happened. The 3 things was that your child had to have perfect attendance. Means you had to send them to school every day. 2 was your child had to be registered at the local health agency. And 3, your rent had to be paid. And then you could get, see, if you was getting 3 something, they cut you to 2 something, but they reinstate you back to 3 something if you do them 3 things. Yeah. Now, I suggest to you that that is a test. And that test, I thought it was ironic that that medical thing was in there because in D.C., they had all this thing about the Stop the Crime thing. And they forced the mayor there, Sharon Pratt Kelly, to come out and do something against the people. And she came up with a 15-point program to respond to crime. And I mentioned to you before that the 14th point was to assure that all 2-year-olds were inoculated. Right. Now that I thought was strange as a part of an anti-crime program. Right. And I could quote for you that it appeared in the Washington Post so that any of you would be able to look these up and of course have access. This is the front page, November 27th. This is being done right at the Thanksgiving moment. And there she is on the front page of the Washington Post announcing that she's getting tough on crime. Now what happens in D.C. is that the white boys in the Congress run D.C. on behalf of other white boys, the owners. Now, whenever something goes down over D.C., they turn to Nick and say, y'all better go cool that shit out, says, we're going to do it up here. Now, they hate declaring it from the hill or from the house because it reminds everybody that it is still a plantation.
That's right.
Check.
That's right.
So they like to have the blacks do it so they don't have to do it. Now, the little white boy who was a thief at the so-called house bank took that gun and shot himself in the mouth. What's the name? Rossi. To pretend as if someone had accosted him while he was walking his dog. That was the second so-called assault against a member or a staff person of the House. So the whites then declared, we've had enough. D.C. better do something. And the City Council of D.C. immediately ran out and imposed immediately provisions that allowed detention for 90 days without arraignment. Check. On so-called violent crime. Now it has unfolded that the white boy shot himself, that the hysteria was contrived, and they reacted on behalf of the white man without even verifying the validity of the hysteria. Now, cattle react. That's the Jewish theory about Goyin, or cattle, who when you shoot the gun up, automatically, like the herd, run in the opposite direction. And with the right type of guidepost, you can herd them in the conclusion that you deem necessary. Now, what that means is that FEMA thing could come down just that thin of a line, and 2-3 fake incidences could arise that would then result in something being imposed. So this fact team becomes very important because it must be in the position to counter their false hysteria that would contrive a set of circumstances that couldn't be produced naturally. Check. Okay. So we come to some understanding about what it is that we have to do. Articles to refer to: Michigan court fails to restore welfare help. The unanimous decision issued by the 3-judge panel of the Michigan Court of Appeals is expected to prompt further evictions of thousands of poor tenants. Thousands have already been turned out since the state ended general assistance program on October 1st, the start of Michigan's fiscal year. Most states have some form of welfare program for poor, childless adults who are physically able to work. But Michigan, faced with a budget deficit and hoping to end the welfare dependency, decided in late September to end such aid immediately, cutting off payments that have averaged $144 a month. Now, they did it because of a budget deficit. Check. Listen to me now. Who's to say that that was not contrived, or that a group of whites put the hole in the budget and a group of blacks got to take the weight? That's where the squad have to jump in and declare, oh no, we saw where you had this sweetheart deal for these 24 road builders who sold you the asphalt that got to be replaced every 60 days, because for half the price you could have bought the asphalt that doesn't even break, and you would have never had to repair it for potholes, but you didn't choose that. You chose to keep procuring. And the reason we will know these type of things is because we're going to have to pave the streets when they're ours. We're going to have to know what kind of asphalt to buy, what kind of salt we need. We're going to have to know what concrete we need to cut a curb. And we're going to have to know these things. And I'm proud to have worked for some brothers when they ran some cities, when we had to sit up and come to some conclusions. I watched Harold Washington pave every street in Chicago. And it freaked the whites out, because they was begging for some stuff that he whipped down and showed that he could do it if everybody understood what they were doing. And it's never been brought to the people that way. Therefore, the people missed any opportunity to help be decisive about getting things we wanted. Anyway, so those things will and must develop, and we be extremely conscious of those things. And this is all now countering another group of people. See, I suggest to you, we are now getting to the edge of receiving some important FEMA material. And we suspect that soon we're going to look at some of the training manuals that deal with some of the responses that have to be given. You see, after we start throwing out this dialogue and we start talking to them, when you talk, for example, to the firemen who are told that in certain circumstances they have a responsibility to be a part of population migration, that they have a responsibility in evacuation. And it was said, I think Brother said, short-term and long-term. There were several levels of how this type, or permanent, it was voluntary or involuntary. And that the firemen were trained in how to voluntarily and involuntarily produce evacuation of citizens' areas. Now, if you get to talking to them about what the circumstances are of certain these provisions, you then ask them, did they tell you where you will go when this come down? And they say, no, they didn't. Then you're likely to be where I am, even though what they've told you so far suggests that you're going to be the one doing it. You may be called in first and be herded in the fence first because you know enough about the plan to stop it. So you got to share the plan to protect yourself. Check. Yeah, see that. So you're right. Because if they don't go and leak it back out to us, who going to protect the plan being whipped on them? That's right. So I think that there'll be cooperation. And as we said, we know more about it than we ever did, and that there is cooperation. And that this is important to incite this type of responsibility. Michigan welfare cut, a social experiment. What's the experiment? What is the experiment? You mean to tell me you don't really have to do this? You're only doing this because you want to see what happens when you do this? And now that you've done it, didn't you get the response you were looking for? Didn't we go for the same formula? Here come, what's up? Here come the leadership to take the air out the followership that suffering is okay. I heard a very prominent person's speech the other day, and until I hear the whole speech, I'm going to refrain from putting their name on what I heard. But what I did hear was rationalization about why people should accept suffering and why we must wait on something to come and relieve us of this suffering, which in fact will not be done from sources other than through the ones who are experiencing the suffering. What we're being told is that someone who is not suffering is going to come and help the suffering. And I suggest to you that the only ones going to help the sufferers are the sufferers themselves. But how are we forced to relax is that suffering is rationalized and prosperity is suggested as the utopic response to suffering, and how we all wish we had it, but isn't it so unfortunate? God taught us and built us to suffer without resistance. Now, I don't think that's godly at all. And I need to hear the rest of that speech before I publicly give my conclusion about what I'm thinking about. You got to come with some conclusions about these sort of things. Now, I know when I was here last, several things that we didn't get in the record. Last time we talked about, I mentioned to you these two books, which we didn't go through. In fact, this got a new cover on it because I made sure that people who I asked to look out for certain things had copies of these. This is the Organization and Functions of FEMA, the document, the governmental document that articulates what the responsibilities are for each of the employees. And of course, the other book was the FEMA telephone directory, which in fact gave the staff jobs of all of the employees, their phone numbers, and whether or not this person had a secured line or a regular line, and that this line indication also could also be decoy, some indication of their level of responsibility. And I know we mentioned the books, but we didn't go through them. I know we went through one person's job, the early warning and attack officer person. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other positions that are result. You remember before we talked about the state of California and what we are finding out about the relationship of the military and FEMA here in the state of California. And we also mentioned for the record 2 articles that I have to read into the record now to get and to foster some clarity about articles and discussions about FEMA that have to be entered in the record. We had mentioned before the CNN special assignment transcript number 104. which is dated November 17, 1991. And we mentioned, in fact, that this particular CNN special project had taken over 1 year to produce, and that CNN had been unable to get the information from the government, which allegedly is designed to protect FEMA. Now, what I found in I still have a lot of unanalyzed FEMA material. I say that in that every time I get a lecture, people bring me 20 more pounds of FEMA stuff, and it takes time to sit and to review the information. And now we're really starting to train people on how to read. How to read in a way that you then turn to someone else, and while they're walking, eating, talking, maybe even boo-booing, explain to them the essence of that in a way that it can be relayed to another person and make motion. I learned a part of how I was successful in the municipal government in Chicago was my ability to be a quick read and to be able to abstract that and relay it to a person, identifying the main sub and sub-sub concerns within the material, and even then say, after read that, I think this might be good and that might be bad, so that they could have choices, and found out that I got given more material because I was able to translate it and put it in a decision-making mode. And that there is no job called that in our community. And so we need to teach each other or give some honor to how we have done. Phil, brother Omar and sister had to make decisive decisions here. They have to make it every day when they have to decide what they're going to order and what they're not, and how they're going to spend what they have. And we don't give credit for these things. These are skills. These are the ultimate skills. What if he was touching 100 stores instead of one store? Now it's just a matter of that the capital wasn't there, but the skill has been proven. So we have skills that have not been given the outlet to meet the challenge. So we have to, it's our job, if we can see it, to put the damn thing there so that the people could do what they got the case. I know some of you here are real good, and we can go back and forth, but we must have some way to reward for these reactions and actions. Of course there is the ultimate reward, but the revolution is how to pull you off of that and into that so that you can do it full time, and then you will get even better at it. I can vouch for my own growth, but I tell you how I had to do this after work. No one should have to do that. And anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Check. The importance is that FEMA was even being kept away from Ted Turner. Now remember, now look at this thing now. ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, lying every day. Another white boy show up. He a cowboy, really. He a cowboy. Check. Turner is a cowboy. Cowboys show up and offer news from around the world slightly more truthful. He's the last one in the set. All of the others lose to him because slightly more truthful made him the #1 newsman. And he upped the ante on the others. Now watch very carefully this guy, because I think at another time the whites gonna jump him. And they gonna tone down something that ain't necessarily real sharp, but is sharper than the other blades in the sink. So he goes and moves on FEMA. What does it mean to turn your news organization on something that may be submerged? And if it took you a year, what did you have to negotiate to get what did you agree not to do? That's it. So that we can give some appreciation for what it says, but while we study it, we give analysis to what it doesn't say and what maybe they had to do to compromise what they did say, and pick up the phone and call David Lewis at CNN in Washington or New York or wherever he is, I believe Washington, and ask to speak to him. Call him on the telephone. Dave, man, that was really heavy. Man, we was talking about your piece in L.A., man. This was dynamite. The black community was really excited because we're somewhat apprehensive about this. Dave, now I know they had to put some pressure on you, and I saw you were struggling real hard. You can see him struggling in the transcript, saying how hard it was to get certain things. So you give some credence to the strength of his journey. Check. And then you say, did you see anything that you couldn't print that you think we ought to know? And he may say, are you in town? You want lunch? Why are you interested in this? Say, well, actually, under the cover, we have our own way of trying to watch the ones that are watching us. We don't trust them. He say, really? Now, depending upon where his real alliance is, he will begin to relate to you. Maybe he will say, hey, talk to me about what y'all be doing. And you say, if you'll talk to me about what y'all doing. Now, you might not be doing nothing. So you one up on him because you ain't got nothing to give him because you don't know about it. So that ain't a bad position to go into where only you can score. Check. Okay. Now, so you start the process of dialoguing with this person because you never know what's in the outtake. Never know what didn't make it. And somehow you have to understand these are competing things, so sometimes you have to pit the one on the other and get them to switch and say, you know, I talked to this producer over at ABC, and they say they coming with a piece, and they say, man, y'all piece wasn't nothing. You know, and they don't like that. I mean, it sounds petty. But you got to learn how to manipulate them like they've manipulated us. We've agreed to that. But anyway. Now, Ted Turner should know something about having done this FEMA thing, and I didn't see it in his piece. What I didn't see in this piece was that when FEMA makes the decision about what it must protect in an emergency, what I found high on the list that I didn't understand before is that the banks are protected. They on the protected list. Now, which banks will they protect? Well, it won't be no savings and loans left, so we won't have to worry about the neighborhood boys. And you're seeing Security Pacific and Bank of America consolidate and dissipate slightly before they recoagulate when ain't nobody looking. Right? We know the process, and on and on. So we also know that this particular consolidation means that, well, I suspect that the Federal Reserve is going to be protected, right? The World Bank, the IMF must be going to get protected. And some bank, maybe in each region, going to be protected. And we need to have some forecast about what that might be. We need to this might be something we need to know. What did they think was worth protecting in the areas where we're standing? Because somewhere in there may be a key to other things. Now imagine if the Michelangelo virus had eaten up all the bank records. And there was no record of how much of yours they had. Right? And you had to produce a record to get what was yours, and we keep the worst of the records. Therefore, we lose or shave off some of our dough just by the transition. And I make a suggestion such as that because if they have identified the banks as being protected, maybe there's something there more than what we thought. Maybe there's something else related to what might be in the building, what might be in the vault, what might be underneath the building, and what the real role is as the money system in a revolution. Now, as I made before, in the Iranian Revolution, the first thing the Americans did when they lost the Shah was to create billions of Iranian money and go in there and buy stuff with fake money. They did that to sabotage the government. And so they're aware of that the control of the money is important. So FEMA has a relationship where they may in fact have even went to some bankers and pre-discussed with them evacuation and vault and information protection techniques. Check. See, we're just looking at this a slightly different way. In the reading I've done since I did the first one, I have had to come to different conclusions about what exactly and how much into the private side of things FEMA may have already deputized people, institutions, and locations that we need to be aware of in the meantime. See, governmental is sometimes easier to trace. The private, where the wealth is unlimited, can sometimes be more difficult because somewhere, sometimes just a mere worker under appropriate circumstances may tell or get weak. But a million trillionaire or something got less rationale to waver. It's life or death for them. And so we'd be conscious of that. Within this article, and all of you should get it, and I should in some way have some way of making this available to the people here. What's up? I missed something? Almost kicked it over? It didn't go down, did it? No. Okay. Saved it? All right. I didn't even have to see it. That ain't the last one, is it? Okay. This dialogue was talking to Tom Golden, Chief of Central Intelligence Strategic Defense Command. And the reporter is David Lewis of CNN on special assignment. And in a voiceover, Lewis says, within the hidden government, there is a secret plan which could make an unelected official outside the legal line of succession president of the United States if nuclear war begins. These individuals, there's somebody here called Ralph. This ain't you, is it, Ralph? Nope. All right. So somebody here called Ralph said these individuals would have the right to appoint, virtually appoint, a new government. Voiceover. Tonight, the results of CNN's year-long investigation into doomsday government. Took them a whole year. It says they're called special access or black programs because no light is allowed to shine in them and reveal them to the world. All of the black programs, almost none is blacker or more hidden than the COG, Continuation of Government program. None is more blacker than this one. Now, blacker to me, as I said before, mean it must be for the blacks, not black or dark or black holish. Says the secrecy was mandated by COG's awesome mission to ensure the survival of a civilian constitution government in the event of nuclear war, and to ensure that civilians can keep control over the U.S. military's retaliation to attack. The basic continuation of government plan calls for the evacuation of key government officials to hidden bunkers scattered throughout the United States. Well, see, we could have a little exercise with each other. We could sit in a room and we could forecast, thinking about L.A., 25 people we think in this town would be evacuated. Name a couple of people you think who are government officials here in L.A. who would be evacuated if they had to take 25.
Gates.
Gates. Everybody say Gates first. Say Gates for Bradley.
He ain't going.
He ain't going. Bradley ain't gonna make it. Who else? Who else?
Sherman Blackshare.
Sherman Blackshare? Yeah. Who's he?
Sherman Block, the sheriff.
Sherman Block, the sheriff?
Yeah, they know where the bunker is.
Right, right. Anybody know where the bunker is?
I do.
Where the bunker at?
Under the Hollywood sign.
The bunker is under the Hollywood sign?
A friend of mine in the Coast Guard told me years ago.
The brother said a friend of his in the Coast Guard told him years ago that the what is it that's there?
Bunker.
The bunker is underground in the Hollywood Hill. Right? Right? Check. Check. Okay, check. Y'all thank the brother? Okay. Right. And that means that we need hiking tours up in that area, right? Now see, that just reminded me that in the hotel there was a brochure about taking this Hollywood tour, and they give you this fascinating opportunity to take your picture next to the sign on the hill. I think I'm gonna spend $20 to go on this tour to walk around the sign on the hill. Because maybe the tour people might know something about it, so they let them walk around it to keep it readily accessible to people and keep the limbs and the trees down, so it doesn't look like it ain't never been walked on. And I remember they did Rocketeer up on that hill somewhere playing like that. So it might be something up to that. So any of you, if you choose to, take a walk up. Can you see the hill good from Griffin Park? Or that is the hill?
It's next to each other.
They're next to each other. And who is Griffin Park named after? What's a griffin?
Boulay sign.
Right, it's the Boulay sign. And the griffin got something to do. Brother mentioned it the other night. Everybody was talking that the griffin was some sort of mythical protector of something. Right? So maybe there's some clue up in there. And that's where they got the scope thing at up there, ain't it? The astrological thing, or what's the astronomy? Right. Reservatory, right?
A lot of bike trails up there.
A lot of bike trails up there. Anybody here ride bike? Need to take a ride or two. Interestingly enough, he said it says Lewis, Ronald Reagan authorized the National Program Office when he signed a top secret directive in '82. Oliver North was one of the key officers responsible for the program startup. Under NPO's direction, 4 agencies were charged with execution of the Doomsday Plan. The CIA, the Department of State, the Defense Department, and FEMA. Now, the CIA, the Department of State, the Department of Defense. Stop. I make some suggestion that if FEMA somehow inquires or maintains a responsibility over something, and that FEMA, where's that? And that FEMA somehow does something with the Department of State. All right, thank you very much, brother. Is there anything I can share with you, brother, before you left?
You're doing it.
Oh, I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. But if you're still here and want to come and swing around here now, I'll lay something on you, make you feel bad. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, brother. And so that we need to give more attention to who in the CIA, what in the State Department, and who in Defense will be directly responsible. Now, we know, as we talked before, that the U.S. Army is directly responsible for responding to civilian unrest. Now, the point to that is that we understand their role. But the CIA's role, and where is the CIA around here? Is there an office in L.A. called CIA? You need to look it up, right? I'm saying you need to look it up. And if you stood at that elevator 2-3 hours a day or came back 7 days in a row, you might see who walk in and out of there. And you just might see somebody. You don't never know. So few people around there looking, I don't think they'd be ashamed to walk in and out of the office thinking there ain't nobody looking no way. Or the office is disguised as something else. So when you call that phone number and trace it geographically, it don't show up as something say CIA. It might say World Travel Agency or something. You know, so we need to give some attention to where these particular focuses might be in our area. Interesting thing. Bruce Blair Brookings Institute. An effort was being made to consolidate the continuation of government program across several major departments of the government under one office, which later turned out to be the National Program Office. Bruce Blair is the only person we found who would openly confirm NAPO's existence. He was hired by the program in '85, but he left before his security clearances or worked on specific projects. My suggestion is that FEMA has worked with numerous people in training and other things prior to them actually, or them actually not being government employees. Uh-oh. Blah, 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 blah. What time is it? What time we got?
9:40.
9:40. We got to talk fast. Now, says that Bruce Blair was the only person to talk. I thought that was interesting, that the only person that CNN could find who would talk about FEMA openly was someone who worked at the Brookings Institute. Because it must give some credence to that the Brookings Institute don't take no stuff from no government. Because they don't have no problem about talking about what's in the government and don't fear any retaliation from the government, almost as if they're /over government. Now, we do remember that it was at the Brookings Institute in '71 that the Trilateral Commission idea was produced in the form of something called the Tripartite Studies, and that was done at Brookings in summer of '71. We also know in Watergate that Nixon asked G. Gordon Liddy to break into Brookings in summer of '71, said that there was a special project going on there that he wanted to know about. Of course, it was to announce in '72 the emergence of the leadership grouping, United States, Western Europe, and Japan, as the engineers of the New World Order. And from '72 to '92, they then got in that position. So Nixon was aware that something was unfolding. This Nixon, I seen him the other day, Nixon kicking ass. Nixon's still around talking stuff, telling Bush, criticizing President. The man ought to be under the jail, right? What is he, got him picture in the middle of the auditorium, giving wisdom and stuff. And that white boys got it going on, boy. I don't know how they do it. You ought to teach Mike Tyson. Son, I think, you know. And so we just think it's strange that this man have or feel this comfortable at Brookings to be able to articulate about FEMA. But it also, as we mentioned, remember the guy we mentioned, Brian Jenkins, in the last lecture, who worked for Kroll Incorporated. How many of y'all went and at least checked to try to see what Kroll Incorporated was about or where it was stationed at? See, we know it's somewhere here in Los Angeles. I don't know that. So, hey, now people called me and asked me to spell the name and all, probably to get me on the tape saying them. But a lot of people ask me for the info and stuff, so I expect somebody to have gone away and gone stake them out. We get our own 50 people. Brother Jamal and Brother Stan, since y'all on duty tonight, you all are willing to volunteer your cameras at periodic moments to go out. I know Brother Jamal and Brother Ralph have experiences showing up with video cameras, getting news, and they will tell you the people are so stupid they will stand in front of any camera not knowing where it's going and talk like the shit is the news, right? And I've seen these brothers get people fight in front of the camera over who's right and who's wrong. And these just two brothers standing there whipping the camera out and people performing. Our people are psyched by these things. And so there's a role for us getting involved in using them for our own purposes. So I want to hear some commitments today from Brother Stan and Brother Jamal. So you're right. I mean, I already know. I gave credence that you had done this even prior to today. So I want to bear your weight. And so we just need this, and we need to all ride with them, right? So we can all see it together, you know, and just be at different places where lessons could be unfolded by observing and recording the observations so we could then even tell the others. But we mentioned that guy Brian Jenkins, and we mentioned that Brian Jenkins was at the RAND Corporation, and the government asked the RAND Corporation to develop a system for dealing with terrorism so that it didn't come out of government, it came out of RAND. It didn't come out of the government, it came out of Brookings. So I'm just giving a suggestion that stuff related to FEMA may be deposited in other places that do not say FEMA on the door. And that when we talk about that web of Network One and go through the think tanks, the Aspen Institute, the RAND Corporation, the Brookings Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, the Sloan Kettering Institute, the Institute for World Order, we then discuss that these are the embryonic moments for ideas that have government manifestation. So that if we're now giving an accurate analysis of FEMA, we have to go into the spots where the thoughts of FEMA are developed that are then imposed upon operators who then develop ways to do it well. So we just be conscious about the diversity of the observation. It says here that as I understand it, this is Mr. Blair, this office fell under the jurisdiction of the Office of the Vice President. You see, the major FEMA revamping, it mentions very clearly that under Reagan, the revamping of FEMA became escalated and the focus became domestic. Now, I changed that from Nixon having a role, from Ford playing another role, for Carter doing even a greater role, to for Reagan then to do what he did. So it's not that any of the others did not up the ante and whip more on the people. It's just Reagan tripled the ante, just like the debt tripled under Reagan and all other things. Everything tripled under Reagan. And so the question is that they all did it, but he then just put another twist on it. And between 82 and 84, this revamping escalated. But you must come to this understanding that the office that was responsible for the continuation of government program was the Vice President's office. At that time, it was Bush.
So he stood ready Eddie when Reagan would get sick, weak, or shot. And he was directly responsible for this quasi-development of a government, which means that if I'm supervising what will happen in government, if there is the change of leadership, then I'm picking my people to be in the spots. Shit. So that means that this cadre represents Bush's viewpoint, but then as Bush becomes president, Quayle gets the spot. Now, you all have seen me, and I don't know if I did it here, and I don't really want to do it tonight, about putting it in the record, about showing those news clips from January 5th, 92, to January 12th, 1992, the front pages of the Washington Post to show that Quayle was being groomed and laid in position to be the president when Bush fell out right in the middle of that week, that Wednesday. And that those are the dates. You can check the front pages for yourself. 2, 3, 4 pages on Quayle, 7 days in a row, Bush falling out right in the middle. And my suggestion is that since his office is the benefactor of Bush's death, he may have had a role. See, he knows he was being interviewed for it, so he knew it was coming out. Check. You understand what I'm saying? If they're interviewing me for a 12-page, full-page story on me, they're interviewing me 1, 2, 3 months prior to. Not the day before it come out, right? So we're saying Quayle had advanced knowledge of this promotional activity of him. And then when Bush falls out and his office is responsible. I remember we show Quayle when they run to him in New Hampshire and say, Quayle, what do you think about Bush being sick? He says, I'm ready. Remember the phrase, I'm ready. They then immediately rushed Quayle from New Hampshire, where he was campaigning for Bush, straight to the basement of the White House to the Situation Room. From that basement of the White House in the Situation Room, you can walk through the state of Maryland, through the city of Washington, all the way to Mount Weather in Virginia, where the bunker is located to take the leadership located or constricted on the East Coast. And we know that December 9th, we're going to review that article that talks about Mount Weather. In the Coup d'etat #1 tape, the brother who worked there is in the lecture and speaks to it during the program. And these are very honest people. And all around D.C., these are thousands of these people in D.C. who've had relationships with the intelligence community and others who have or had or are active or inactive, who are walking around, who are accessible to the people, right? And it's just interesting when you got diplomats and everybody all running around the city what opportunities are available. It says today Vice President Dan Quayle heads the program. It is overseen directly by the White House because of its fundamental mission to make sure that the constitutional government survives Armageddon. Now hold it now. Does that mean that they have agreed that it's going to be one? And if they agreed that if there is one, that will jeopardize their existence? I'm smiling with Brother Sam because we talked about having a lecture. What was the title of that lecture going to be, Brother Sam?
Who will survive?
Who will survive Armageddon? That we was going to set a lecture up called that, because we're seeing that they have given some consideration that there is a conclusion to their mischief. And that really what FEMA is, as is the rest of them, are responsible for trying to counter what they know to be inevitable, and they just as soon take their chances at trying to resist, even though they know it's not in their favor. They know they were foretold, and they know their destiny, right? So they're now trying to counter it. So when you go into the program, recognize you're already in the saddle. And they already take you as the winner. And their real goal is not to be the winner, but not to be the loser. And then if we lose, can we half lose? Can we be co-leaders? Can we do what we got Mandela to do for us in South Africa? Which is to say, there'll be peaceful transition. It'll be trials everywhere. Up against all y'all, up against the wall. Go down to them big buildings downtown. All y'all, come on down here. Okay, all the first floor over here. All the second floor over there. Let me pull your IDs out. Who were you? Okay. Right. Right, that's right, brother. We got to line it up.
It says to build the post-nuclear communication system, Federal Emergency Management Agency hired Harris Corporation, CIA hired McDonnell Douglas, the Defense Department hired TRW. Now, when FEMA, yeah, there you go, home, show you right. See, we called out some companies some people in here work for. So if you should decide to accept your mission, this will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Find out within your company who those people are that are working on that FEMA communication emergency system that is supposed to link defense, state, the Pentagon, defense, state, the CIA together with FEMA in an emergency of attack. So, yes, brother.
Anybody in FEMA in the U.S. Post Office?
You do know that because they distrust the Africans who dominate the positions within the post office, the Army has been pre-trained to do everything that is necessary to result in the bills being communicated to the people. That's all that come in the mail is the bills. That's all the mail is for, is to deliver you the bills. It's not for any other reason. And as long as there's mail, you're going to keep paying. But what happened if they didn't go? We've talked about that. If they didn't go, the bills wouldn't go in. If the bills didn't go in, then the payments couldn't come back. The payments couldn't come back. The damn thing couldn't move. Check, check, check. Okay, okay. Now, let me go quickly because I know we went. Kitchen's already closed, ain't it? Okay. What time we got now?
10 before 10.
10 before 10. Okay. It mentioned, now, Bush just appointed the head of TRW to what? NASA, right? And there's some disruption about this over what his role was and role wasn't. But TRW also got what?
Everybody's credit record.
Everybody's credit record, check. The man who had everybody's credit record now got the space thing. But his company also did the communication thing for the emergency management thing. So he must have been on the list already. How many knee-deep in his corporation are on the list? How many of those technicians, how many of those from Silicon Valley have been pre-appointed to assure that they're safe in case of attack? Check. These are things that we must come to give some consideration to in a wider understanding of FEMA, a neglected topic amongst our leadership. Yes, sister.
Has a training program for, it says open for everybody to learn how to use arms.
Oh, TRW has a training program to teach everyone how to use arms, and it means that TRW may have some deputizing authority. Check. So we need to, in the meantime, start the process of going backwards and give some check to them. They out here, right out here, ain't they? Ain't they nearby? Change the things you can reach, right? So that means we got some work to do, right? Brother Charles, where's that program at tomorrow night we're going to be at? This is Brother Charles here.
450 West Compton Boulevard.
You don't have them?
I do have them.
You do have the flyers?
450 West Compton Boulevard.
450 West Compton Boulevard. What's the topic tomorrow night, brother?
Name the Names Part 2.
Name the name. We had a real good program. It's called Who's in Charge? And that was an excellent program there at Yahweh Ben Yahweh. I tell you, I went to Atlanta, stayed at the hotel. Beautiful hotel. You got to hear that Atlanta tape because it's all on there. But I made the people deal with it. And they was on it. It's the Barclay Hotel. Thank you, sister. It's the Barclay Hotel on 89 Lucky Street. Downtown Atlanta, right down the street from the Omni. And it's just an excellent location. Beautiful food in the kosher kitchen. Clean, spotless place. It's a great place to be. I'm going back just to sit around the hotel. Now, I'm going to hold some meetings up in there. We're going to have training. We're holding the training in the east, right up in the Barclay Hotel on the second floor in 2 rooms. One hold 100, one hold 400. We're going to use them both. And we're going to be right there. That's where the / quarter's going to be. Anyway, so we be conscious of those things. So tomorrow, what time?
7 o'clock.
Now, there's a donation for this, brother, because we're trying to help do some things. So what's the donation for the program tomorrow?
Just $5.
Just $5. It's down from $10, huh? Down from $10. All right.
We're going to buy a hotel out here next.
Right. Gotta have that. Okay, and that will be the last program on this trip. We have not yet announced the upcoming trip. I found out I've been talking too much, turned up my head, and I say I'm going these 10 places. 5 of them cave in 2 days later because all of a sudden they've been attacked.
So, but then again, God put 6 more in their spot, so nothing is lost. In fact, this is really interesting how this is shaping up, because there's little struggles around about whether it will or whether it won't. And when the crowd surface and say there will be, you got such a strong crowd having emerged that they then assume responsibility, and now it's off and running. So we be real conscious of that. Let's see here. So we know that these 4 companies, now McDonnell Douglas, what do they do dealing with communications? What do they make?
Space satellites.
Space satellites and stuff, okay. Well, we need to check on them. It says that when they built these systems, System A wouldn't integrate with System B. System B was critical to interface with System C. None of it interfaced together. It was like, so what? We'll catch up with it later. We never came to that. It says here that it happened at a secret site near Great Falls, Montana. And when you're in the airplane coming to California, look down if it's daylight and look out there at what looks like solar power cells. It's some stuff out in the middle of the desert. I do not know what it is. It's in little squares. You see little rolls of squares, and it looks like water or hydraulic or greenhouse or something. But if you're coming into California in the daylight, look down and look at these things in the middle of the crevices of the bottom of the mountains, down in them valleys. I don't know what those things are. And you just need to look at them. Somebody will know it from some reason, but I do not see any around the people. I don't know what it is, but I make some suggestion that they're studying some things that we already agree will work, applications of the sun and the water and other things that they're not sharing with the people publicly, but that they're prepared to utilize. Well, I guess Sister will pass the bucket in the meantime. Put what you can in there. We haven't been here that long, so I don't deserve that much. So I'd be humble about that, because I have so much more to want to go to. I'm going to keep on going, and we're going to stop in a minute. Also here, says here now, the question was that this new communication system failed. It says that they took Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill and the Senate Appropriations Chairman Robert Byrd were among key officials who participated in the first major test of the new communication system, which means some people have already been taken away and been tested about what they would do in case of. Now the problem is that once they agree to the test, and make sure Ralph put a 50 in, because he's doing good. And then check Marcus too. We want 100 from Marcus. I appreciate you all. Like I say, I didn't believe that I deserved much, because we have had so little time together. And it mentions here that some have gone away. The case in point is that if someone goes away and agrees to be part of the test, if some private corporation agrees to be a part of the test, and they keep their relationship with the test secret, now we have a relationship developing that threatens the community, because these relationships could be adverse at some moment, and certain people would keep the secret. There is no secret. If you're a black person and work at some business, and you know this business is having some special responsibility, do not get webbed into a relationship that does not allow you to be close and appropriate with your own people. It says here that when the system didn't work in the test, they went to a pay phone and called and linked the system up. My point to that is that worst come to worst, they used something you had access to alert their own emergency system that it didn't work with the high-tech stuff. It worked with a payphone and a quarter. Right. And it was enough for them to fool the Congress to get another $8 million to build some more system.
That's right.
It says the test appeared to be a success, but the officials have been hoodwinked and the money continued to flow into the program. Very few people knew about the scam, because the program is so classified, there was no one they could tell. I can't comment other than to say I do believe that Congress was misled by senior level people in the program. In fact, I am convinced of that. It took the Pentagon a year to let Tom Golden talk to CNN about his work. A guy who did talk to them had to get approval. It took 1 year. It took 1 year for them to get approval. Sister, and we need to do it quickly, take another donation on behalf of the Good Life. And we're past a bucket. I really appreciate them. They have never, ever turned me down. Is that a bow tie you got on there tonight, brother? That's just a velvet collar. Is that a velvet collar? Oh, that's brother. I want to grow up and be like you. That's nice. That is real nice. We're going to pass the hat for the Good Life. And they appreciate this, too, because this is profit that they can make without overhead. It's nice to get $20, $30, $40, $50, $60 without having to sell bread and beans and chili and wash the plates and do that as a result of it. And so we appreciate that as they do, and it's good to have it without overhead. That's what makes it good, and that helps them share with the rest of the people, the little overtime like we squeezing tonight, to help them cover the people for the few extra minutes they stick around. Because somebody always has to clean up after this, and they can't leave until we leave. And because, as I had mentioned earlier, my responsibilities are growing, I'm seeing the need to have to do something to rearrange my time so that I can manage this stuff I done started. And I don't mean like I started it. I don't want to be so facetious, because it is never so a simplistic of a thing. Now, it says here that this particular test was, again, enough to fool the people in the Congress. Now, they also mentioned something called Fort Hachiwacha, Arizona or something. What's that about? Military training ground out there? What they be doing there, brother? Used to be an electrician during the Vietnam War? Electronics?
Yeah, Green Beret up in them hills.
Ah, so what they be doing out there now? Communications they got there, brother?
Communication, the highest part of the desert.
Highest part of the desert.
Training and communication and all their equipment underground.
Listen up now. Y'all should be listening to this now. Because while we down there digging into the tunnel, if we run into somebody else's tunnel, we at least know whose it is. Go ahead, brother.
I worked out of Fort Irving, out of the desert. We being from Fort Huachuca to here. But that's what they do. They're training for their encrypto, decrypto, facsimile, which they have facsimiles back from 1960. Same thing as fax machines. They train from there. Then. But that's advanced training. That's what they use from out there. But it's communication.
Okay. All right. All right. Anybody else? Yes, brother.
I just want to say that the remarks from the audience, when you're taping it, we can't hear it on the tape. And sometimes we miss some of the messages.
Okay.
So if you would repeat it.
Oh, I got you. I got excellent point. Excellent point. Excellent point. And we always need to say to the cameraman and the...
We get everybody?
Yes, bro. You want to say something? Okay. Oh, okay. This for the Good Life donation? All right. They make it up here for the other donation? All right. That's good, too. I appreciate you doing that for them. That's good, brother. All right. Yes, sister.
Now they've been doing a lot about, since the Soviets have done their thing, and they've been going where the secret police...
Is that something you want to put in that? I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is that, yeah, okay, there you go. There's somebody over there, too.
They've been able to go into the secret police headquarters, and what they found out is that a lot of them kept specimens on people. So they were able just to give the dog a smell of your specimen, and the dog will be able to find you no matter where you were. That's what the doctor gives specimens. They want so much urine, it's possible that they can be stored.
Here she is, here.
Somewhere.
Thank you.
Also, a woman was able to go inside and find out if there were any informants or whatever on her, and found out her husband, who she had been married to for years, was the informant.
Right. That's the story. We had that story here about the German Stasi. And that only reveals the depth of the program. Always the first line of opposition is in the home. That's the first line of defense, is in the home. And usually it's the parent to the child. And then subsequent to that, it could be within a family. And people have misconceived relationships about
authority, therefore you come up with divergent relationships. And that has to always be conscious. I have to say, and I'm like this, I have to say this, anybody can vouch for it that has to be around me, as I am intense about the program. And I've even come down to describe two different people. There's him and there's me. Me is the guy who comes out when all the work has been completed. Me sits around, and maybe me reads, and maybe me looks at the television every now and then. Maybe me gets a good meal. But him, he's a relentless, no compromising thing. He don't take no stuff. And when you're around him, he is in authority and trying to do the best he can to make the decisions relevant to us. And it is an uncompromising relationship. I am not looking in certain cases for ideas and opinions when him is in the saddle, because him been already authorized by others to do what it has to do, and it doesn't hear anything but the voice I cannot hear. And it is a lock-in. And I see these two people. I know what I would like to have for me, but I know me is dominated by him. The one who does these things, who don't even get tired, sometimes got to go 3-4 days without stopping, has to, in his mind, visualize thousands of relationships and consequences and circumstances, and has to equate danger at each of those moments. And him don't fear nothing. Me don't either. Me just want to rest a minute or two when him get tired. Right? Every now and then him get tired and me just get to rest. But many times we have to come to some way or some order about what we're doing. And unfortunately, part of the problem in our community is that it's out of order. And sometimes when you believe that when worse comes to worse, in the dark, when sometimes there's not a moment to contemplate, sometimes you have to be decisive and go within the rim of the vision of another who may have taken the time to study the moment when it appears as if there was no time to think. So sometimes if you have abrogated your responsibility, you may have to lean in or trust into something that may have taken the time that you didn't. And I only say that on the battlefield there must be some hierarchy. At different moments we can all not make the same decisions. It just is not going to work that way. And certain moments of what we do will be democratic, and certain moments will not. Sometimes authority must be exercised based upon the decision, the responsibility, the time in, the experience, and the value of the viewpoint. And so, and I say that to any of you who are around me at the various moments of when I'm him and when I'm me. Him don't take no stuff. Him can't tell the difference between nothing. Him don't have no friends. It just has a conclusion. That's all him does. And different times, me has some opportunity to direct or reconstruct what him is doing. And I just say that because many times, we had a situation this week at University of Michigan where the children were playing with the lecture. Oh, will we do it now? Will we do it later? Let's agitate them with the thought he's coming. Let's pretend like, well, we can't do it now. And so they play with it, and I'd be real hot and heavy on this thing. And I'd say I don't want nobody picking it up on the live wire without having the appropriate covering on your hands, because you'll get scorched if you try to move something that look good and exciting to you, but you ain't got the resistance to be able to take the plane and the agitation. And so anybody who's been in anybody else's army understands at some point when they submit to some other authority. And even in our own army, we're going to have to come to some conclusions about our relationships with each other and be mature about making some decision about who we are and are not going to listen to, who is in authority and who isn't, and make some decision about how we're going to be decisive. And these are just some things we got to kick around with each other so that when that moment comes, we know just what to do. I believe that we can make it. I really do. It really looks easier every day we talk about it. And it's being done in all kind of places in different sorts of ways. People are doing this type of thing. And so we got to give some credence that at some point we're going to all merge up together, but ain't going to be no bullshit. Now, excuse me, good life, but it ain't going to be no bullshit in the revolution. And it's going to be something. I don't know what anybody want to call it, but they going to do something, and we going to have to do something back. And I don't know what they going to call it, but thereafter ain't going to never be the same.
The day after that ain't gonna never be the same. And so we're prepared for the day after that. We've given thought about a week after that. And everybody then knows who's even been through that they've thought about these things too. They've come to certain conclusions about what they must do, etc. But there's a certain thing in their provision says when it looks like you're losing, surrender and get with the opposition. Right. And maintain that position until it appears as if you can reconstruct and try again. So there's a moment when they lose and they gonna switch sides. But if you kept score, you won't let nobody butt the line. Check. Okay, let's carry on real quick. So we know about and need some discussion about these spots that are probably around here in these hills that have some relevance to this program, because I don't believe they're going to take all these people all the way to Arizona. Got to be someplace they're going to take them up and down here. It's got to be somewhere between San Francisco and Los Angeles. We know the military's in San Diego. We know that. We don't know. Maybe that's their spot. But we know it's got to be somewhere up and down here, and you can count the cities on the water as to where the spot going to be at. It's going to be one of these cities on the water, because the port is important too. And that's another thing too, boy. We're talking about port authorities. You just stand around a port one day around them tankers and watch them drugs come off them ships. Sometimes they be hanging right out of the barrel, right off of the wood. They don't even hide it. Ain't nobody there looking, but the stuff just dripping all everywhere. Ain't nobody there, so ain't nobody to hide, and they just be running it. Everybody know what to do and who to turn over. If the cargo got lost, certain people know not to touch it. And they know who to give it to, or who to call to see come, and the government come and take it and sell it. And then use it in its relationships with other people, on and on and on. So that's a whole nother thing. But I also think that FEMA sells drugs. I think FEMA sells drugs because FEMA has to plug into the drug delivery system, pharmaceutical as well as recreational. FEMA must be into that. FEMA could not leave the supply of drugs left unattended to. In other words, they are well aware that if a certain city is being starved from a certain drug, that it'll have an adverse reaction into the social service system. If heroin was strangled from a town that got a fix, then that town is going to have social upheaval, not because of the fact that these are revolutionaries, but because the inability to get the drug will cause an individual to have some unstable reaction, and collectively they react, and the system measures this. Therefore, no city's level or access to certain illicit drugs are ever suspended, and in many times FEMA is the one taking the thermometer to know what the supply is, and FEMA then would decide what the quality of the supply will be. And when they're on a heavy level program, the quantity increases. The quality increases, I'm sorry. And when they on a program where they want everybody to pay attention, they cut it back a little and open their eyes a little more. And the key was in when they went to the homeless thing. There's no reason to take a relationship with CIA, State Department, Defense, and FEMA and then be in charge of the homeless. That don't match. But the homeless may be an expanding cadre that may be to them their greatest enemy. That remains to be discussed. Says here that the Presidential Successor Support System, a secret government in waiting if nuclear war comes, CNN Special Assignment has learned the names of a number of former government officials whose sources tell us have one time or another been a part of MPO PS Cubed program. In the event of a disaster, one of them could become president. Howard Baker, former senator and White House chief of staff, never before in the line of succession. Richard Helms, the former director of the CIA, never before in the line of succession. Richard Helms was in on the killing of John Kennedy. He likely to end up president if the FEMA thing come down. That's deep. He earned his right to preside. Gene Kilpatrick. Could you imagine Gene Kilpatrick walking around saying, I'm the president? A former ambassador to the United Nations, never before in the line of succession until called by the National Program Office. Former Secretary of Defense James Schlesinger, who was standing right next to Richard Nixon yesterday when he made his comments about George Bush or whenever that was he made them.
Never before in the line of succession, but before NAPO was set up. Dick Cheney, Edwin Meese, Tip O'Neill, Dick Thornburg, all have been in the line of succession by virtue of their offices, but our sources say the NAPO gave them additional responsibilities under the new system. None of these officials would talk to us on the record about their role in NAPO plans. That means they may have talked off the record. Check. And gave the reporter a lead for keeping their name or something that they said out of the story. But some program insiders defend the alternative plan of succession. Bob, remember we're talking about the final circumstances. Now check out, now this is the insiders talking about what is the mentality of these people. Now remember we talk about that thing about the Jewish people and the pig parts, about how they say if your life is jeopardized, that don't worry about the fact that you ain't into pork, take the pig part and stay alive, which means that when your life is threatened, there are no morals or values that you will respect. This guy says something because we need to know what the mentality is of this team. Says that, remember, we're talking about the final circumstances. I didn't think there would be any option to that. How do we predict who will survive? It can't be done. So we have to go on the premise that we have enough alternatives, knowledgeable people in enough locations to do the job. And that sounded just like what we were trying to do. Put enough knowledgeable people in enough locations who understand what their job is and who can produce alternatives based upon changing circumstances. On the other side of the debate, critics say that the hidden government plan is so extreme that ironically it violates the very Constitution it is designed to protect. Remember, governmental law allows the president to come up with presidential directives that supersede any law. It's a finding. You heard about it in the Iran-Contra thing. It can be secret. And it can have monumental governmental authority in it, superseding law or even illegality, and still be legal because he declared it, and it's a private thing. No one knows about it other than the ones he orders to fulfill it. It can say, go kill Coakley and 25 others because they're jeopardizing the security of the U.S. government. And that could be deemed legal. You can't compare this plan with the Constitution. The two don't match up. This same official says the plan could put the American system of checks and balances in the deep freeze. Directly or indirectly, the checks and balances between Congress and the White House, in fact, all the laws of the United States are based on the U.S. Constitution. That's why when I lecture, I keep saying that the unifying document amongst all of the whites is the Constitution. Now, if you're going to stop what they're doing, there's no other place to go to. That deals with the Supreme Court, the executive, the legislative. It's all there. So if that's the cornerstone, that's the one that got to be broken. Check. There's no other spot. There's no other unifying document. There's no other central source. And we remember that that document is a remnant of a secret society known as Masons. Check. Show you right. And so, it says here that today the constitutional scholars and students of nuclear war debate whether a document written more than 100 years before the existence of the electricity can address the new scientific and technical realities. Is there such a tension between a nuclear war and the fact that nuclear war could happen in 30 minutes? Now, all of this dialogue, now what is going on now with FEMA? And when I talk with the firemen privately, separate from the lecture, I asked about mentioning to them that the specs of FEMA are in transition right now, because the specs are justified on a nuclear attack, and now the transition has to be made to make the threat domestic. So many portions of it, or the rationale for what is done, must be rewritten. When I showed you that article, the reason I started with that article of Colby's, who ran the pacification program in Vietnam, CIA director, when Colby said that he equated social ills with terrorism. This is transition language. This is now justifying what is being done behind the scenes. Check? Okay. So that they would have to listen very carefully to dialogue of the transition.
Arkin is a leading authority on nuclear command and control issues, as well as a continuation of government program. A gentleman named William Arkin, A-R-K-I-N. What I've come to discover in looking at COG, does that have any biblical significance? COG, C-O-G. That mean anything? COG? Huh?
They have two. It's like the final in Revelation, Gog and Magog. Might be close to that.
Okay, does that make any sense to anybody? Somebody speak up, because some of their stuff is in code. Oh.
Okay, you familiar with the protocols and all that. Antichrist, Jesus is supposed to come back and deal with God and Magog.
Ooh.
Antichrist.
Ooh.
That's how
Ooh, now that's deep. Now remember we said earlier that they said that COG, C-O-G, continuation of government, okay, is the blackest of all the programs. Remember they said, now let's go back. Because see, they ain't just saying this stuff. I think it's in code. It has some significance. It says here, it's a world of spy satellites, giant eavesdropping antennas, secret weapons programs. Yet further, beyond the government barriers, there's even more hidden world, the world of secret programs about which virtually nothing is publicly known. They're called special access or black programs. That's quotation marks. Because no light is allowed to shine in. Light. They're alluding to a moment that's deep. That's deep. That's deep. Yes. Somebody said something?
ain't nothing but Satan.
Oh, I don't think that was Satan. I think that was Omar.
I'm just saying what you referred to.
I wasn't going to. I heard you right now.
The names that you named they
Yes.
belong to.
Right. Now that's interesting that COG thing is in there, and we just give credence to that, and that they use the word black. Here come, brother. And it says that of all the black programs, almost none is blacker or more hidden than COG, continuation of government. So it, huh?
Steve,
Huh?
you was going to have a seat?
Oh, no, I'm all right, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much, brother. So we be conscious of that, and that use of that word black and so forth. And somehow, I tell you what I do, Brother Phil, I'm going to leave a copy here. If I can get a copy of this at the Good Life, and maybe it could be punched into the bulletin board or something, everybody could read it. It'll be available around here for everyone. Also, remember this article, and I got to close right away. We're going to close right now. Second here, Doomsday Hideaway. Remember this? This is Time Magazine, December 9th, 1991. Carved into Virginia's ridge more than 3 decades ago, a secret bunker still stands ready to shelter U.S. leaders from a nuclear attack. This is Time Magazine, December 9th, 1991. That was CNN, November 17th, 1991. In fact, the day I was giving this lecture, they come out in D.C. Yes, brother. Oh, okay. Doomsday Hideaway. You get it, Jamal? Okay. Okay, and it says, inside Mount Weather, in the event of a nuclear strike or terrorist assault on the Capitol, several hundred senior U.S. officials would be helicoptered to the special facility 48 miles west of Washington. See, that's a damn lie. I know for a fact that to helicopter anyone in an attack, especially a terrorist attack, is 100% vulnerability. In fact, if they say they're going up, that means they're going below. See, we already know that they're going down, but they publicly saying they're going up. And if they say they're going to Virginia, that must mean they're going to Iowa. Check. Because we got to code it. We know everything they say has a measure of truth. Okay. I think Brother Phil's watch is burned in his hands. It then jumped off his arm and already in his hand. One last thing. Can I mention one last thing, brother? I just want to get this in the record. You all got tape? You got tape? It's just take a second. I just want to make sure we get out. It says listen to this, most among the leadership carry special identification cards, designating them as evacuees, and have already been briefed as to where they would go if there were an emergency, according to Becton. Becton is the brother who used to be head of FEMA. The emergency instructions tell them what to do and where to do it. That means that we could capture someone and steal their instructions. Check. Okay. So we be conscious of that. It says each successive administration has rehearsed the evacuation drill. So one day if you see them all doing something, going in one direction, follow their ass. Cabinet secretaries and heads or seconds in command of key government departments and agencies where they should assemble to be taken out of harm's way. So we be conscious of this being important to us. It says it shows the facility there in the mountains of Virginia. It shows the hills and the trees that separate it. On all those routes, the Pentagon, Fort Meade, and all of that, that's up and down them highways up there on the East Coast, are all surrounded by trees, heavy trees. All of them are heavy trees. So if you got green uniform, you can get through there without being seen. It says Mount Weather is an extensive review of country, state, and federal documents, as well as interviews with more than 100 current and former officials, provides a tantalizing glimpse of the installation. Mount Weather's virtually self-contained facility, above ground, scattered across manicured lawns, about a dozen buildings bristling with antennas, microwave relay systems, the on-site sewage treatment plant with a 90,000 gallon a day capacity and 2 tanks holding 250,000 gallons of water could last some 200 people more than a month. So they only count on 200 in that bunker. There may be 10 bunkers of 200 each. Okay? That's all they think they need. Now, if everybody died and just them leave, you think they're going to come out from there and scrub floors? The ones they going to take away going to be so weak, if they all had to go away and came back out, they couldn't make it. They need a slave. I mean, really, they couldn't make it because these are the weakest of all of them that end up going to be the ones to go in. Last thing. Okay, you got to go.
Also, Jenny just had a strange phone call. I wanted to share that with you, all right?
Okay.
On the tape.
No.
Yeah.
I was calling. He had just flown in from Northern
Can everybody hear her? No.
He just phoned in from where?
He just flown in from Northern California. And he said, there's a meeting I'm supposed to be attending at the Good Life Health Food System. And I said, oh. I said, there's a meeting in progress now, perhaps, but he's ending right now. He said, oh, well, do you know if by chance I can meet with them tomorrow? And I said, well, there is a meeting tomorrow in Compton. He said, well, then how far is Compton away from LAX? And I said, 20 to 25 minutes. And then he said, well, this is a meeting on Black History now. And I said, uh-oh.
You know what, brother? Do you think that could be them? We were expecting some people from Oakland who were coming from Northern California just to meet with me about bringing me to Oakland, and they were actually flying in just to come here. They had missed us on our last trip here. They were going to fly in, so that they were honestly, it's just unfortunate. I hope we didn't lose them, but we were trying to make contact with them prior to, and it may have been these people who flew in just for that reason. And I'm proud to think that someone would want to fly in to meet with me to figure out how to take me to the...
He said Black History.
Right, well, he doesn't quite know all of it other than that's the type of program he wants to bring up there, and I was told to him as the guy he'd want to bring to deliver that. And so I don't know them yet. They're friends of Brother Osafu. He did tell me that they were trying to make it. They've been trying this now for a couple of weeks. And so God, overall, we will get to meet with them. If it didn't work right now, if it was meant to be, it will be. I never feel like we lost anything. And I appreciate the protection. Because, yes, I was mentioning earlier, we're coming into a transition where people are offering us different type of things, and these are people who say we have money and excessive talent and don't have a way to find to help something that we'd like to do because we strapped in and we'd like to help, and you the guy we want to help.
The only other thing is, before you close, I'd just like to thank everyone for their graciousness.
Right, I appreciate that, and we appreciate you too, brother. And just the last thing in closing, this was Gates. Help wanted, bring cloak dagger. CIA Chief Bob Gates needs more spies stalking the New World Order. Sunday, February 9th, 1992, Washington Post. The end of the Cold War has brought all the world's spies in from the cold, right? And the written finish to the romantic, scary chronicle of Cloak and Dagger has stretched over the past 47 years, right?
Wrong, and wrong again. In fact, quite the opposite. The trend is up for the tradecraft set. CIA Director Robert Gates and espionage chiefs from most of the Western powers agree that the New World Order calls for, in italics, more spies, not fewer. Now, this is a declaration because it's saying all you past spies who want to be reinstated, call in, we're reviewing applications. No, I'm telling you, I know how they can put it. See, it's in CIA borders. I always spoke about articles that were encased with the border. You see that box around that article? Anytime you see a four-corner box around an article, you double look at it. Get a stack of 10 or 15 of them and look at the articles. I assure you they have double connection. This is how the CIA can talk to you talk to themselves in front of everybody with no one understanding it's them. That box is theirs. Every newspaper runs 10 boxes at least. Watch it. Look at the pattern. Just lay up off of it, store them, and look at the stories. That's a four-cornered story. Anything four-cornered is theirs. 5 out of the 8 are messages. 3 out of the 8 are decoys. Anyone who's been through the system knows of it. Therefore, all the ones are not on, certain ones that are boxed are on. And you look very clearly at the declaration. It says Gates is leading the charge to put more fedoras and raincoats into circulation in global dark alleys. And Congress is responding. Obviously, they got them all hooked on the bank. This year, it gave them $50 million above what they had requested to beef up the U.S. spy fraternity called HUMINT, H-U-M-I-N-T, HUMINT. That's in all capital letters, human intelligence. HUMINT is a word with a slightly sinister, if antiseptic sound. Means that 007, Smiley, and Christopher can live it up again. The world of dead letter drops, brush passes, and microdots hasn't departed after all. To be sure, Gates has vowed to reorganize the vast intelligence apparatus of the world remaining superpowers to ready it for the demands of the 21st century. This shopping list is suitable chrome-plated because electronics, a new secret news wire for the U.S. government, top 100 to compete with CNN. In other words, CNN became so much the source of all the decision makers that the CIA has developed their own CNN to supersede it. Now, I told you about when the white boy shows up and tries to be more truthful, that they will want to intercept him. And says, listen, last thing, it says, but now that the old boy network aglow is Gates' insistence that the United States do more to find out what terrorists are planning. That they come to the good life. Even though we're not terrorists, it would be misappropriation of funds. What Muammar Gaddafi tells his henchmen, how Saddam Hussein's plan to outflank the UN. Well, we know that his guys ain't around us, Hussein's, and the UN sanctions to get nuclear weapons. You can't get that kind of stuff from eye-to-sky satellites and spy planes. No matter how sharp your lenses, you need assets, double agents, go-betweens, eavesdroppers, false passports, false bottoms, blackmailers, frontier crossings, wads of cash and unnumbered bank accounts, the whole bag of dirty tricksters plus all the tricks. In other words, Gates wants a fast forward back to the future, taking intelligence back to the days when the spies were kings and analysis mere bureaucrats. This is the fundamental change in which the way all intelligence agencies will do business in the future. It means that hundreds, perhaps thousands of new spies will be recruited. That's deep. As the leader of the world's biggest intelligence community, Gates is the de facto leader of all other Western spy chiefs. It is clear from interviews with other Western intelligence heads in the past 2 weeks that where Gates goes, the rest will follow. His battles will be their battles. His victories will ensure their survival. That's deep. And all that just suggests is that Gates, as Bush, has been the supreme policeman in the New World Order. Gates then is the supreme chief of the secret police of the New World Order, and all the other intelligence chiefs must check in with him. And he is not only setting his agenda, but the world agenda, and they better serve him with the information or they can't get the money. But the money boys are the glue to keep the operators in the know, in the game, so that everybody respects these boys to keep their relationship with the other boys, and we know we don't want none of them.
So I only say that as you look through this stuff. Remember, of course, the FBI is coming into the community. You got the Achilles Heel program, where the Achilles Heel is in all the black urban cities, getting guns, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms connection, and all that. Just to say, I appreciate all of you all. Thank you all for coming out. We have some FEMA tape 1. I got tape on Atlanta you all haven't seen yet. Coakley does Atlanta. I got Coakley does Minnesota. It's the one in Minnesota I've been talking about. We got a couple other lectures that you haven't heard yet that are available tonight. Oh, yeah, Who's in Charge? You want Who's in Charge? We got Who's in Charge up here, right. And Persian Gulf War, I think we got 2 copies of that, full set, a 6-tape set on the war. I thank all of you all. Assist whatever you can where you are to help. Who's ever here at the Good Life. Let me say this. I'm out of here Monday morning. I do not know exactly the return trip. As you can see, we tried to, before tonight was over, to make some announcement about when I'll be back in the States, so I know when I'll be back down here. Don't forget, tomorrow night, 450 West Compton Avenue. It'll be a good program. We'll have a good time. I can go through some...
That's different from Avenue.
Boulevard, okay? And listen to the Good Life. I will call Janie and Phil from anywhere, Omar and Janie from anywhere I am in the country to seek with them a date when I can return. They will put it on the bulletin board. If you don't see it on the top, thumb through it. It might be laying in there somewhere. We're going to try to get a little bulletin board all our own, or maybe every week we could even send 5 articles here to the Good Life, like articles of the week, that will lay on a bulletin board. You think we might could procure us a little bulletin board, and this would be our little information booth. And in China and other places, they have posting spots where they post the information. Everybody comes and reads it. And this would be a good spot. And I think this would also help the Good Life, that people would come to read our bulletin board, because we put good stuff on it. So I see you all tomorrow night. Then I'm out of here. And I'll see you on the next round, Yet Determined. Thank you. Thank you.